what is happening is there are a lot of whirlpools of energy that are being encountered as we creating our own energy field by virtue of us, gathering by more or less unified intent. Individually, intents are different, but there is a unifying quality to that. We can speak to these unifying qualities and acknowledge them very quickly. The fact that it's the same place, same time, that we are here doing a lot of activities at the very same time. We're sitting and meditating with a certain intention, which is then further funneled into that. So we are undoubtedly creating these waves, moves. We're shaking consciousness.
Fascinating to join my own sociological background with this work, but also the essence of consciousness and the...
I missed that word, your...
My own background in sociology.
In sociology, okay, got it.
And the magical possessiveness, let's say, of spirit. And I would be curious if you could maybe expand a little bit on an experience I keep having in this room of this possession having multiple expressions. So if this whole room is a Shakti, there's also seeming individuals who are taking on different roles. And this individual, if we were to call this an individual space or micro container, to the macro container of different countries, different cultures, as you've shared, being kind of expressions of Shakti in relationship to each other. So I guess the question is trying to not take a postmodern, well, yeah, there's just different things and everything's diverse, but wanting to understand how different Shaktis are relating and how maybe also some Shaktis take more power, take over more, possess more, or maybe are empowered more, and then are maybe balanced in hidden or underground containers, such as this one maybe, that then is a sort of natural balance to the whole.
Very interesting question. There's kind of like two ways to reflect on this, and I'm just wondering which is the more fitting one. One, more specifically to the situation, and perhaps I'll just briefly outline these two possible ways, because they kind of seem to be taking very different angle, different approach to redress what you have brought out. One, the immediate one, is of what is happening in the room, right? This what's happening to your own process, what is reflected through individual expressions and the totality or the sum total of these expressions. So the simplest reminder would be that although everything has this fractal-like, so any event that taking place anywhere, no matter how isolated, unrelated, or seemingly unrelated, is one way or another reflection of the whole. So we know that, right? So, and it's down to any element. This is almost incomprehensible and doesn't make any sense. But I mentioned that in Dorn, I had this exchanges at the breakfast. We had very interesting company with John Hagelin, who is the leader of transcendental meditation in the United States, very well-known quantum physicist, with whom I was privileged to be on a panel a year before, and we've met in Holland at the same event, and we had this table. Really, it was a good group. Would have breakfast there, and we spoke about this, and John Hagelin gave this example that to understand a true state of interconnectedness of everything is, and he gave this example that you take a leaf of any tree, and you observe that leaf for a very long time, and you reflect on that. And at certain point, there would be this moment when a surface level of observation will begin to break down into something else, right? This intimacy of the observation would move it onto the next level, and on to the next level, on to the next level. If we don't lose interest, right? Obviously, if we do, then that is halted. But if we don't lose interest, and at some point, it has to begin to reveal the underlying structure of creation. He was speaking as a quantum physicist. And of course, someone asked at the table, well, is that in relation to natural forms? No. It's not restricted to anything. So, therefore, I brought example of fractals, right? Inuit catching a fish right now. It's as remote as what's happening in the South India right now. Or in like a busy day in Manhattan, right? Or in Beijing. So many activities taking place. They are completely and utterly at the surface level, completely and utterly, I can't even say that. Because all I want to say is interconnected, but the opposite of that. What's the opposite of that? Unrelated. They're completely and utterly unrelated at the surface level. Totally. And yet, at that very level, exemplified by having that communion with the leaf, they all reflect the whole. So now, more specifically, wherever we are, and I'm not even talking about the fundamental level or the unified field level, because that goes without saying, but it would have to be taken on trust until that becomes once directly cognized, let alone lived reality. What is happening is there are a lot of whirlpools of energy that are being encountered as we creating our own energy field by virtue of us, gathering by more or less unified intent. Individually, intents are different, but there is a unifying quality to that. We can speak to these unifying qualities and acknowledge them very quickly. The fact that it's the same place, same time, that we are here doing a lot of activities at the very same time, we're sitting and meditating with a certain intention which is then further funneled into that. So we are undoubtedly creating these waves, moves. We're shaking consciousness. So this is what I mean by creating a field. But at the very same time, there are other vibrations, previous group, country in its own unique setup, the immediate situation, the close proximity to one of the largest conflicts, military conflicts right now, Ukraine, right? Where it's not just a war between two countries. It's known as a proxy war. A lot is invested there. The whole world is invested there. It's not just Russia fighting Ukraine. It's not autocracy fighting democracy. These are slogans which have no reality beneath them. They don't even have superficial reality. They're just not true. Because we know that declaring Russia as just an authority state, it's a very, very general blanket statement. Pronouncing Ukraine a democracy is a far stretch. And we know that the interest in these countries, in this particular place where the military conflict attracted the interest of so many powers. so many powers that are geographically far, far away. How long that so many factors that we could say the world is already fighting Third World War in Ukraine, effectively speaking. Even if on the ground it is still restricted to particular type of ammunition, particular type of military equipment, which is true. Neither Russia nor NATO display full arsenal capability of the countries, of the blocs. But we know that in the minds of people, in the minds of the leaders of the state, politicians, deep state, right? This war is raging on for survival. Yeah. So energetically speaking, is a lot at stake. So of course, we cannot not feel that. This is what was so different in between now and October. We were a smaller group, and somehow, maybe time was different, we were not able to go anywhere deep. This was my experience as retreats leader. This is why I was little, I was really, really pleasantly relieved on second day, I think. Second day, by end of Wednesday, I think I said that it feels very different. It feels very different this time. So there are also the imprint of what in the country as Poland has been happening for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, and so forth. So not only just this particular place, whatever activity, whatever group was before that, whatever this facility served before it became retrieved and refurbished and rebuilt, right? All these factors are at play. We know that. We know that there is clinical studies back in the days when larger groups of meditators would be assembled somewhere. For instance, I'll give you an example. In Holland, back in the days when TMCD program, Transcendental Meditation, CD program was introduced by Maharishi Mahesh Yogi in the late 70s, it then was implemented widely in all countries where the movement had its activities. And there were large programs held across Europe, particularly in Switzerland, United Kingdom, and Holland. Other countries as well, but in Holland, large groups were here. People reported very, very peculiar experiences when retreats were held in places which had very strong Protestant background. Like in the case of one particular large group was housed literally in a converted to secular activity Protestant monastery or something like that. People had these ghosts of the past in their meditations. They had this strange, deeply colored religious experiences there. Not religious experiences themselves, you see, but the field was still carrying these vibrations. So when another methodology is introduced, which gives this access to deeper states of consciousness, then all that begins to intermingle, and there is this, you see? Because if the activity was held there for however long, it left an imprint. It left an imprint everywhere. Just as we now leaving imprint in every fiber of this wall, in these columns, everywhere, in these mats that you're sitting on. So the next group will come and they will hopefully harvest that what we managed to generate with the amplitude of all the electromagnetic power that each of and every heart is capable of doing. So this is just in relation to what's happening in the room. You see, where do we draw the line and say where that influence is minimal? It's not as easy, because then comes the individual setup. Every one of you, it's a mixed crowd. This is not an advanced group where, let's say, all-timers get together. And, it is no, I don't think it's a harm to mention. Those of you who know that, you feel free to share with the group. When we sit as an advanced group, the level of coherence is experienced on the first day of what is touched in groups like this on the last day. We begin where we leave it here. Because of the quality of the group, you see, already matched up, the frequency-wise. So, in some, the process is on a stage where simply spinning out the system is freeing itself from the accumulated stresses, there's some scars, all these psychic impressions. In some, there is this a more steady state of unfoldment. In some, there is this conversion of energy. So all these different processes. So therefore, I don't even know where to begin to distinguish, let's say, what would be our signature of our group. I'd say we would have to spend here a bit longer than just 6-7 days to know that. You see what I mean? Like, let's say, now everything is measured in like time, totally like has a different dimension compared to what it was even 20 years ago, let alone 50 years ago, let alone 5,000 years ago. Like you tell, like we carving out 1 week for immersion is considered to be a heroic act. Imagine asking someone to come somewhere for 6 months. You're out of your mind. Like this is like chunk of my life, But what I'm saying is that to know to truly answer what you're asking, I think would take longer than just days we have here. This is one answer.